And here we go. We are live for the Social Monkey. I'd like to welcome Apps from Dimp Digital. Get himself in the camera. That'd be a good start, wouldn't it? Absolute tit. Yeah, so thanks for coming on today, mate.
Not a problem. Good to be here. Glad to chat some gaming and some other bits and
Mate.
pieces that we can talk about.
Do you know what, right? I've got such a limited amount of friends that are gamers.
Really?
I have, yeah. Because I'm a massive RPG fan, and I detest FIFA and any sort of game that's competitive that you have to pay for after you pay for the actual game itself.
Yeah.
It drives me absolutely nuts. So I think I've got maybe one or two. My brother's one. He's massively on World of Warcraft.
Still going strong.
He's been there from day one. He's leveled up every character you can think of, and like every race, every time there's an expansion coming out, he's on it. But I can't get to grips with it because as an RPG man, I like to finish what I start.
Yes.
And World of Warcraft doesn't finish.
No.
And it does get on the globe a little bit, but he's just like mad on it. Brilliant. They do trading online with swords and armour.
Whole community based around just that game and all the items in it and real money exchanging hands as well in some cases.
I know, my old man showed me this war chest that somebody had and they paid what, 500-600 quid for it, and I was like, Jesus, what is going on now? And another friend of mine sells skins on Steam.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I was like, how are these people actually parting this much money for something that's digitally not there?
It's crazy. It's great. It must be just random millionaires that just love these games and think, oh, I'll pay $5,000 for a gun skin or whatever it is. Wish they'd pay $5,000 on our Patreon one day, but
You never know, mate. You never know.
That's it.
To be fair, is it something that you've consistently played, Warcraft?
No, not really. To be honest, I've given it a go. It's one of those things that I wasn't there at the beginning because it's 20 years old now, close to, and I'm reluctant to start things like that just keep building and building and building because I'm already like 200 hours behind. So I've actually played something like Guild Wars 2, which is a MMO online, similar to Warcraft. Doesn't require the monthly subscription,
which is a bonus.
Yeah, which is a bonus, and giving that a go. And then recently, Amazon launched New World, which is their take on MMO, 35 quid all in. So I've been playing that the last sort of month or so, and it's good. They're not really my type of games. I think I'm more in your call, where I like to start something, finish it, be done with it, move on to the next thing if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only MMO that I've really done a lot of damage on was Neverwinter.
Yeah.
I was a massive fan of that. I was, I can't remember, is it a thief where you've got the daggers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my main character. Maxed it out to the point where you couldn't get any more levels, and it was all a lot of online co-op stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't play well with those. Not the fact that I can't commit to it like others can.
Yeah, that's the problem. And even I find that now, just trying to organise a game of New World once a week with 2 other people. It's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm out that night. I've got the kids. So it is difficult. So anything that I can play in solitude without having to worry about what other people are doing, I'm going to go after that. But you should check out Final Fantasy 14. They've got an MMO.
I had a little play around with that, but I couldn't get into it too much. I think that the start of it is very basic. You know, you're chopping up mushrooms and small little pigs, and which I get you need to start off small in that sort of game setting, but it didn't grab me like a lot of other people have as well.
No. Yeah.
Final Fantasy 14, I think the devs are on the same on Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah.
I think that shows as well. If you look at the aesthetics of the game itself, you can see that the devs have got a massive influence from 14 over to 16. So it'd be interesting how they marry that up.
Because it's not going to be an MMO, as far as I know. It's going to be like 15 and remaked, 7 remake.
I sincerely hope so, because I think it's only going to be based around one character as well. Which is very, very rare. I don't think there's been, I think maybe the offset stuff like a Dirty Server or something. That was obviously a car crash of game, but I can't believe I got sucked into buying that old shit. It was just so bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. But I mean, you've mentioned on a couple of your game titles, your idle game chats, of games that you're looking forward to. Final Fantasy 16 is a game that we're looking forward to, but there's not been too much to talk about it other than the trailer, which is very disappointing, so I thought there'd be more.
Yeah, I think so. It's about a year old as well, so it's been like a year, if not a little bit longer, since we've seen Final Fantasy 16, and it looks so good in that trailer that a lot of people, especially in the industry, were thinking, it's going to be quite close. It must be close. Now, obviously, COVID was rife at that point. It's been evident there's been tons of games that have just been pushed back. Like this year in particular has been quite stripped back of games. lot of stuff that was planned for this year is coming next year. So I'm expecting early next year. Let's get a date on that for later next year, and then we can go. But yeah, it's one of those things that we bring up, but it's like we've already discussed this. Like there's been no new updates, but sometimes it's cool just having them reintroduced because you kind of forget about it. Your memory gets a bit hazy, and then when it comes back, you're like, oh, this is the shit. Now let's get on the hype train.
Yeah, well, I think they've overplayed their hand a little bit, Square Enix. They've had a lot of titles that they've been pumping out over the last few years. I mean, obviously the newest one with Guardians of the Galaxy. That looks quite impressive. I'll probably be interested in having a look at that at some point. But I've also found where Square Enix have also delved into other titles, so the likes of Kingdom Hearts and Nier Automata, all of these other ones that are coming out. It's starting to look like they're merging together as games, where the gameplay is similar to every story. So I've noticed from 15 to 7 Remake, a lot of the stuff that you do with Noctis is very similar to what you do with Cloud. The air attacks are still a bit something to be worked on. But yeah, what was your impression of 7 going from start to finish? Because a lot of people found it hard to get past the first few chapters.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed 7 Remake. And this is from someone who never got to go through the entire of 7. PlayStation 1 original. A lot younger back then. It's just turn-based. I just couldn't do it. And these days I still struggle. But I really enjoyed 7 Remake. And yeah, it was challenging because it's an out-and-out action game. There are moments where you can pause it and sort of slow things down while you get your spells and your combinations going. But it was tricky. Like, it was a lot harder than I was anticipating. But that's sort of the action game genre now. That they want to, you work through most zones and you find that you can't get to the boss and you're like, I don't know how to beat this fucker. Like, you get stuck there. And some people do get frustrated. I don't blame people for falling off the wagon. I've been close to putting controllers through screens, which isn't healthy. But I beat the fucker. I got the better of him eventually. So it's a tough balance. I'm playing Metroid Dread at the moment on the Switch.
That looks fucking tricky. That one.
And it is. The boss battles and that are tough. It's very much learn the patterns and do the right thing at the right moment, or you won't get through it. There's no sort of room for error, which is fine until you get to the big fucker that you can't beat, and then it's frustration city. But no, Final Fantasy VII Remake, I really really enjoyed that, and that's a complete rookie coming away from the original. Got really no ties to it. I know roughly what goes on, but I was really intrigued by the way they took that and the sort of different direction that they appear they could go if they wished to do so. And a game to play, it was fantastic from start to finish.
I agree to a certain point, but I think where they fell down, they had too many. Do you know when you're running through the zones and you hear the conversations of people? I forget the terminology that people use for that now.
It's just like narrative dispositional. They're just chatting amongst themselves, aren't they?
I think there was too much of that because in the OG game, you get to choose whether you speak to these people and listen to what they've got to say. And when you run through certain zones, the voices amalgamate together, it sounds shit.
Yeah. And they say the same thing every time you go past them.
Well, to a certain degree, only changes when big events happen. So that changes. I mean, I think I've done 140 hours on the game. I've combed everything. The only thing I haven't been able to do is Hojo's battle arena.
Yeah. I couldn't do the chin-ups.
In the gym. I've done that.
I've done the first stage and the second lot I couldn't do. I was like, oh no, I can't do this. I have to walk away.
It's frustrating, but you get that in the original as well, with the War Market scene. The OG is a little bit more seedy than the original. I think they've had to tone it back just a little bit.
Yes.
But what did you think of that dance scene, the Just Dance moment? Did that make you cringe? Because it did me.
That was like the one. I was like, I hope the wife doesn't walk in now. It's like, how do you explain this scene going on and try and there's no defending it really. If you come in and see that, you're going to think, what are you doing? In good faith, I'll let you come in here and spend 5 hours and you're sitting here watching this going on.
There's now Padlock Marley.
Exactly. So it was cringe, and there was definitely moments in it where, and I don't know if that's just a translation or like the Japanese culture thing. Like, it's obviously these games are developed in Japan and whatnot, and there's always been a little bit of that when it comes over to the West, but Yeah, that was a bit of an eye opener, but you know, when it was all said and done, I was like, no harm, no foul. They've kept it in there and tried to modernise it. It's still very cringy, but it's not going to take away the whole experience for me.
No, do you know, I got to do it. I got my daughter to do it for me. I went, "Oh, off you go." And she went, "Dad, actually, that bloke actually looks a bit like you." So now I'm Andrea Rodale. Yeah, she got a screenshot of me next to the. Yeah, it was like, okay, yeah. Very Louis Spence-esque it was. That's what it reminded me of. Very fabulous, very fabulous. But moving from that game on to Integrate, now you've been able to play that. I'll take it.
So I've played the graphical enhancements, but not the DLC.
Oh, okay.
So I've not played that yet. But I've played it on the PS5, which is where they released the patch to upgrade it, and it is a stunning game. Like you'll play it on that. But yeah, I need to get on there and buy Intergrade because I borrowed it off Adkins, so it doesn't come with the DLC, and because it's the PS4 version, it doesn't come with it. If you buy the PS5 version, it comes with that.
I was under the impression you got the PS5, you've got things downloaded if you bought your PS4.
So you get the upgrades, so you get all the graphical bells and whistles, but the actual story piece that's added, I think it's £15. It's not it's not a bank breaker, but it was like I finished the game, I was like, I want a break, and I'll go back to it, in the future.
Well, the interesting thing that I've noticed, because where obviously I've not been able to play the Integrate part, is the team-ups that they're going to be presenting in the next part of the Final Fantasy series, number 7. You get a small hint of it on the final boss. I don't know if you've noticed it, when you kill, I don't know what it's called, the Harbinger of Death, or whatever it is. You see Barrett and Red 13, and they do a together motion. But I'm interested to see how they're going to do that for 7, 8 characters they've got to put in there. It's tough.
Yeah, it's always difficult with they've obviously got a cast they need to stick to. They've got to wedge in, the old stuff that makes people happy, the team ups and whatnot, and for it to play in a real time, action game is tricky. But I think they'll get there. I think they've got a good handle on the moment to moment gameplay. Just think people are going to be worried potentially about if they take a different narrative direction. I can see that rubbing people up the wrong way if it goes, left field. Whereas maybe a modern audience would be more receptive to that. But if you've played the OG, you kind of want that again, in a modern game.
Well, the story's changed anyway. Within the game, so people are now expecting there's going to be changes.
Yes.
And we've all waited so fucking long for this game to be completed, let alone get the first part that we got last year. I don't think there's going to be too many complaints, and there's so many different aspects of the game that need to be explored. But can you do that in another 2 games?
No. Well, that's the thing. We don't even know how many parts it is. But I wanted to ask you that. Someone who's from the OG crowd loves it, and you find out they're remaking it. I bet you're like, wow, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
Then you find out we're only getting part 1, and then you find out as you play it, there's some narrative choices where they're making a difference. Where do you sit on that? Because I can understand where people want the sort of story retold again, but there's a lot of changes they've made with this, and we're getting it piecemeal. And the big pieces, 140 hours. There's a lot of game there to be done. But I wonder how you felt about it being split up, and then some of those directions they might take it, whether it's annoyed you or if you've embraced these changes.
No, I've embraced the changes. I think that where the game's split up anyway, it's on 3 discs. So you sort of got the idea is that they're probably going to do that. You saw how much work went into getting the OG one done on the PS1, because it was supposed to be on the Super Nintendo. That was the original for Final Fantasy 7, because it was a direct follow-on it wasn't a direct follow-on. They only released 6.
No.
Not long after 7 was done on the next gen for the original PlayStation. I found it welcoming because they've taken the turn-based aspects of things but put it in real time. Like you said, when you slow it down and you've got that time to change your materia over, you've got all those bits and pieces to do. I've welcomed it. But the only thing that I'm worried about with this is that how they're going to approach the open world. Because it's so fucking big. It's huge, and I don't want it to be like Midgar, where you're going to be going through certain passageways, like you can see in Final Fantasy 13, where you can know where you're going. There's nothing fucking hidden. There's no mystery to where you're going.
No, go from A to B, and that's it.
And I don't really want that. I'm happy for the game to stretch 4 or 5 games, if it means that we get a proper open world experience like we got as a PlayStation 1 player. That was the massive part of the game, because you could just fuck off anywhere you want. And they can even do that. I mean, there were certain points where you couldn't go over mountains or through grasslands or through water because you didn't have the right vehicle.
Yeah.
So again, the multiple vehicles is going to be a challenge. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it too much because you haven't seen the second part of this.
I haven't, no.
No. So where I've obviously seen the whole part of the game, I've finished it. I think I've had Final Fantasy VII on every platform since PS1. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Hopefully, really luck. But then, what I can't see them doing is making big places explorable. So, for example, in one of the scenes in part 2, there's how can I put it? It's like a casino scene.
Okay, yeah.
Right, and the place is massive.
Yeah.
So incorporating that into an open world, which is already massive, is going to be a massive challenge. So I honestly think that the way that they're going is good, but I don't think we're going to get it in 3. It's going to be like 4 or 5.
Okay, I'm up for that.
Yeah, well, long may it continue because there's so much story to be told.
As long as they get to the end, this is the thing. If they start veering off and you think, right, where are we going with this? How are we going to get back to the culmination of this?
They've already started doing that though, which is annoying because they've already released like a Fortnite version of the game as well, and it's awful. It's really bad. You know, you're using materia instead of like grenades or you're electrocuting people, wind and all of the other sort of elemental material you're using. It's not for me. No. Fortnite's about as far as I'll go when it comes to shoot 'em ups.
Yeah.
Call of Duty, I've swerved that because it's just overly priced for what I pay for, so I don't pay online.
Yeah, the campaigns are like 4 or 5 hours, and then that's it.
Yeah. What's the fucking point?
Yeah.
Well, what is the point? But actually, one thing I want to obviously pull you on was Cyberpunk.
Yes.
You've berated Cyberpunk for its failings, and rightly so, to a certain degree. But have you looked back on any previous games that were Cyberpunk-esque prior to this one coming out?
As in, so I played The Witcher.
Not from CD Projekt Red,
right?
Because Cyberpunk and another game called Shadowrun derive from the same universe, pretty much.
Okay.
Right. So on Steam, I've got the Shadowrun series.
Yeah.
So you've got Shadowrun, Hong Kong Chronicles, and Dragonfall. So they're set in different parts of the world. So the original set in Seattle, in America.
Yeah.
Then the second one, Dragonfall, is based in Berlin, in Germany.
Right.
And then the third one's based in Hong Kong. And all 3 have the same similar aspect of Cyberpunk, but you've got orcs, elves, dwarves, also incorporating that you've got the cyberblades, the cyberdecks, you've got all of that. So it's all incorporated as one. And that's a turn-based game, strategy turn-based. You set up your characters, you give them the weapons, you receive karma, which is like battle points, so you can increase, like you do on Cyberpunk, your body or your gun. Yeah. So it's all exactly the same. So I've been playing that for about 5 or 6 years. So when they announced Cyberpunk, I looked at my missus, I went, fucking finally. I said, I can't wait for this shit. This is going to be the bollocks.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I had biased approach to this because I looked past all the glitches and the problems.
Got to do what you got to do.
And again, I've nearly amounted, over 100 hours worth of gameplay, 86% completed. I think there's only a couple of things I haven't done.
Yeah.
I haven't purchased all of the cars.
Right, that's the only thing.
Yeah, it's the only thing I haven't done. I haven't purchased all the cars. But do you think that they could make this better?
They can. They can repair it for sure. I mean, it released. This is the thing. I think they can get it working nicely and up to a respectable level for the big boys that may be a surprise down here. Yeah. I think for the PS4 and the old Xbox One, it's just going to be too much of a struggle. I think that it's too ambitious for those platforms. For it to run nicely. Now, whether that bothers you or not is a completely different, conversation. Some people, I've put them in front of games and I think this is right. I'm like, shit, and they're like, it's fucking great, isn't it? I'm like, well, yeah, it's for you. It's fine, yeah. I'm sitting there going, bloody hell, look at that. So it depends on people's tolerance for these things. And like CD Projekt Red, I love The Witcher 3. There was no reason really to expect them to make such a hash of this technically, and they clearly stretched themselves too thin and released it when they shouldn't have done. But we see this time and time again with games. We've seen it with Anthem. We've seen it with Mass Effect Andromeda. And these are from big, established, like EA, the biggest in the game. So it does happen. They can repair it, and it's just going to take time. They've already announced they're pushing back the DLC and the next-gen patches till next year. That's all supposed to come this year.
Good.
And that's the thing to do now. They've just got to hunker down and get on with it. For them, it's frustrating, I guess, as a business because there's nothing to sell. They've sold it now, so they're working on the back of the sales. But they need to make it right because the next game that comes along from them it's going to be laser focused on
Yeah,
the performance on
it.
They're going to be right on top of that. So they can do it. We've seen. I don't know if you remember No Man's Sky when that came out.
That was fell on its arse as soon as
as soon as you started playing it, I was like, "What is this? This is not what I was expecting." And it was really light on content. You know, go 5 years on, people love that game now. It's had 15 or 20 updates to it, all free, all completely included and free. I think that's how you get people back. For those that invest in it, you give them the content as free as you can. You make it so it's running nicely, and then people will soon forget. Like they're a fickle bunch, us gamers. If you start improving things, we'll be like, okay, we can be friends again.
So that would be what I'd expect from CD Projekt Red now, to follow what Shadowrun did and change. They've got the aesthetics of what Night City's like and what the world is.
Yeah.
You've only got to change small parts of that to adapt it to another country. And if they were to do that, to take it away from Night City, a completely different story, but obviously everything else is the same. I think that might potentially save them because they know where they've gone wrong in the first place. Perhaps putting that down as a DLC, like a small patch of something that, 10 hours of gameplay can get you through, just to say, there you go, because they've apologised enough. I mean, the amount of money they've had to reimburse people.
It come off the Sony store, didn't it? And that is, I don't remember that ever happening. I mean, I'm positive it has, but not for a title this. That's the most anticipated game of the year. No bones about it. Last year, true. Everyone wanted it, and that broke through. It's one of those rare games that even like the geeks like me, we're all excited for it. Like me and Adkins, we live in this world. There's people outside of that world that were like, "What's this Cyberpunk?" They had all heard about this thing. Oh, Keanu Reeves is in it, blah, blah. And then you had all those eyes on you, and you dropped the ball. That's the thing.
And one thing that I did find with the game is that you were trying to do certain actions where you had to either pick up bodies, transport something somewhere, and the body would just be hanging out of the car.
Flapping about as you go by.
Yeah, you think, what's gone wrong here? And one thing that I've noticed that it's bad with that is driving.
Yeah.
You're driving in the car and it crash, and I thought, right, okay, I'll take your finger off the trigger and hopefully it reloads itself with any luck. And quite a few times it threw me out. Send over the report and go, look, this is still happening.
That's the crashing is definitely like the stability of a game is like key to it. It has to run. Like even if it runs badly, as long as it doesn't crash, then you're retreading old ground. People give up. Like you just think it'll take a strong person to fight through all that, and it's you need to have your game stable. And that's stuff that isn't even. It's not that it was hidden under. They knew they had issues. That you can't go for a whole testing cycle and not say this is crashing on a high percentage of times. Like for a game, probably shouldn't release this, but they did.
Do you think it's down to money then? Get money out the door.
Oh yeah. I think that's the thing. They haven't really been punished financially because people went out and bought it. And you know what they did? Sneaky bastards. They released it to the media on PC only to start with. So I think the game might have come out on a Thursday or maybe it was a Tuesday. But anyway, the week before that, they gave the PC code out, which still had issues, but had half the issues of what a PS4 would be having at the time. So the initial wave of reviews come in, and then we use OpenCritic to look at the scores for our fantasy gaming league thing.
Yeah.
And it's at 91. That's really high. That's like an aggregate score of 90 above is really good. And over time, it went to 90 and 89. As more and more people in the console space were given the code or gone out and purchased it, it ended up, I think, on a 71. And they knew what they were doing because they knew the PC version was the best version of the game where they'd have the least amount of problems, and they purposely held the code back for the console people.
Because it was released on my birthday, December 10th, so I was sat there at 12 o'clock going, right, come on, download. I waited up all night to play it. I think I got...
Did you know immediately that something was a bit off? Because you probably wouldn't have seen much of the bad stuff anyway in the lead up to it.
Well, to be fair, I noticed it quite early on. Because when I buy a game, I do 10, 15 hours on it straight away. I mean, one of my streams that I've done on YouTube Live was 7 hours long.
Yeah.
So I put some good time into it. But again, it's going back to the nostalgia thing, I didn't care. I really didn't give a shit because the aspect of what I played on a turn-based system is now I can just roll around and just
shoot,
bang, bang. And I thought that the orcs, the elves, and the dwarves was the thing that was potentially missing from the game. I thought that would have been a nice added touch, a little bit of mystical madness. Yeah,
a bit of a curveball.
Or even a couple of Easter eggs.
Yeah, because you'd have known.
Yeah,
picked up on it. You'd have been
other people would have done as well because the film Bright. Have you ever seen that with Will Smith?
No, I haven't. I've heard about it, but yeah, I've not seen that
That
one.
derives from Shadowrun.
Right,
It's
okay.
the beginning of it all.
Yeah.
The awakening of all of these different races into the human world and things like that. So it's actually quite a good watch. So
Yeah.
I recommend having a watch of that, and then have a look at the Shadowrun series as well. So it's very story based. There's a lot of reading,
Yeah.
but it's enjoyable read. It's adult content, so it's not like you're watching Final Fantasy V and it's all Puko and like happy stars and all that sort of cringy stuff. I've gone past all that now. So what game would you say that you're anticipating the most in 2022?
In 2022, it's probably God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because God of War the reboot in 2018 on the PlayStation 4. I think today still, that's pound for pound one of the best games you can play. Like an alien come down and said, what are you doing? And so we're playing video games. I went, what's that? I said, I'll play this game. It'll give you a good idea of what a really good video game. It's got great story. It's got great mechanics. It's like a big epic adventure. Like you can throw your axe at people and recall it. So a la Thor's hammer, you've got all those mechanics in it. It's got light RPG elements of upgrading Kratos and whatnot. And yeah, that the follow up to that, in how much I love 2018, has to be like my most anticipated. Probably followed by Horizon Forbidden West, which is the follow up to Zero Dawn.
That's a request my daughter's made.
Ah,
okay. She watches all of the games trailers that I watch.
Yeah.
So she's not, I wouldn't say she's up to date with gaming culture, but everything that I've got in front of me, she's normally watching. So Horizon was one that she's looked at. I don't know if you've seen a trailer for next year. I think it's coming out next year. It's a game called Stray.
Yes, the little cat.
Yes.
And
I was interesting. I was intrigued, and I don't know whether I like it or I don't yet.
It does look interesting. Like I prefer it with a dog. I'm a dog man, but cat's all right. If there's no dog inside, I'll stroke a cat.
Yeah.
All animals and that. But that's a very interesting one because it looks like there's going to be even like bits of combat in it. Like at one point, he's got a little jacket on, and it's like it looks like it's in a futuristic world. Humans evidently gone or in hiding somewhere. I like those little, clearly a smaller development team, like a cheaper game to make, but usually come with something interesting. Remember the last time you saw a game that even tackled, walking around with a cat? Like it's just not a.
It sort of reminded me of Bioshock a little bit. The way that it's sort of laid out, the robotic weirdness, the robot looking at the cat and the little heart emoji pops up and things like that. Even playing the guitar. I think when you're resting, you next to her. And I thought the puzzles behind it as well. What can you find? Like throw a tin can in the fan.
That's
so
it.
That intrigued me. I'd be interested to see how the story develops and how much you can keep on playing that game as a cat.
Yeah.
That's what worries me about it. It looks good.
That's it.
I'm interested, but am I going to want to play it to the end?
No. Usually with those games, and it's again a difficult balance for the developers. They wrap them up within time because they've got the money to make it 30 hours. Like you don't want to do it, but if it's anything sort of in the 7 to 8 range, it's probably on the higher end. So hopefully they don't go for like 25 hours. I think that'll be just too long. I don't understand how you could keep the player engaged that long. So hopefully they recognise it and lean it out, because bloat is a definite problem in some of the modern games, like any Ubisoft game, for example.
Too much toot.
Yeah, too much toot. That's it. TMT. It's an issue. Like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I do like that game, but it's so big. I spent 140, 150 hours in just that, and it's like a good game, but sometimes I think back and I think, did it really earn that? Probably not. But then again, it's Vikings. There's not many Viking games. There's just these little bits that if you hit a little note at the right time, you'll get people to come. It's like Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, a pirate game. The last one we've had was Sea of Thieves, which is not quite the same. So that's another online jobby. So people have been crying and calling out for another pirate game, but yeah, too much bloat these days. You've got to try and trim them down if we can.
So do you think that would make the performance better on some of the games then with the new gen consoles by actually scaling it down a bit and being more about the content rather than how long you're going to be playing the game for?
Yeah, and I think it's just they sometimes get a bit up their own arse. I think it's like I understand, because whenever we'll talk about probably content creation later. Like when I've made a video or done a review, I used to do like video reviews. I remember I did one and it was 18 minutes long, and I thought, That'd be alright.
Was that the Oculus Rift one?
No, it wasn't. It was.
No.
I think it was the Alien Isolation. I did it in 2 parts, so actually it was close to half an hour.
Okay.
And at the time, I was like, yeah, I'll put that out. I've done that. I'm not going to throw away my hard work. In hindsight, that would have been much better if I just cut that in half and just taken out some of the bloat. And it's difficult to kind of do that to your own work, which is where these project managers probably come in during who aren't attached to it and can reduce it. But certainly, the budgets for games are going up, which is why we've seen Sony in particular. Their prices have gone up. Their first party stuff, £70 on the PS5. So that's the offset of it. Is if they're going to make these big, expensive games, we will end up paying for it. Which I don't mind if the quality's good, but the longer you make the game, the more you have to do to keep me as a player kind of engaged and happy. Because time at the end of the day is the most important currency we've all got. You don't get that back.
No, true. No, you don't. That's one thing you don't get back. The other game that I was wanting to bring up, because I don't know too much about it. I've watched both of the trailers that have come up. Wukong.
Wukong? Don't think I know this one.
You're joking.
Educate me.
Right, so it's. I can't believe I was half expecting. Oh yeah, this is a great game. This is going to be coming out here. So, the game itself, I think it's made in China. It's a Chinese-based game. You're like a monkey prince.
I know what you're talking. It looks phenomenal.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's bait or whether it's.
That's the thing.
It's an actual thing. It does look good though.
I'll tell you what. There's been a few from the eastern part of the world, like Korea, South Korea in particular, also rising up with they're putting out these trailers and the games look ridiculously good. And then with Wukong as well, that looks ridiculously good. Trouble is, I don't think they've shipped a game between them, so we don't know how the final product's going to be. But there's definitely talent there.
Christ, I couldn't believe that. Do you remember you must have watched Monsters Inc?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Sully,
yeah,
the big hairy monster.
Yeah.
In the Wukong trailer, you fight some dog thing that's got his fur. And it's waving in the wind. You set fire to the fucking stuff, and it runs away. Everything's interactive. So as it jumps all over the buildings, it's all full. I'm thinking, I can't fucking wait for this. This looks amazing. But I've heard no release date for it, so that's why I think it might be a bit bait.
I think so. I think it's one of those. If people like CG Project Red can put out trailers that get everyone buzzing, and then the game ships and it's not up to snuff. An unknown developer from China, over time, if you follow it closely, you kind of get to know what developers can be relied upon mostly. And there's a few exceptions, and people come out of left field. But I love being surprised by stuff like that. So, but anything that's too good to be true in the gaming world, it normally is. Unfortunately, there's very rare occasions where it all completely delivers. But over time, especially when you do podcasts and videos about it, you just sort of pick up on things and think, you can't get overly excited because hype or excitement is like the thief of joy. How many times have you gone into something and been like, I'm really looking forward to this, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It just hasn't met your expectations that you've made up in your mind at the time. And I try to keep myself as grounded as possible because I find that I can just play a game and be like, yeah, that's good. If I put it up on this pedestal and say, this is going to be the fucking bollocks, and it isn't, I'm like,
it's all over the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. No, with new gen consoles as well, what have you found that's different from the PS4? Because everyone, you look at the screen, you can see the aesthetics with the gameplay, but obviously the bare bones of it, what would you say is the main key factor from the PS4 that's changed?
So 2 things. One are the load times, just non-existent.
Nice.
They are there, but they're so quick. So these old screens where it'd have a tip come up and be like, you can do this, by the way. Now it comes up and you're like, what's that? It's gone. The games haven't even caught up to the fact that technology's blasting it through. If you I'm sure when you play Final Fantasy 7, there'll be parts of that where you die or whatever, you're loading into an area, it'll flash something up and then you'll barely get time to read and it'll be gone. And that's really useful in games that are difficult because you don't want to be sitting there waiting, dwelling on your mistakes, annoyed, bang, you're straight back into the game. So the load times, just getting into the games, moving around areas and respawning if you die, they're insanely quick. And the other thing which I've been probably more pleased with, I don't know whether it will continue because as time goes on they'll start pushing these machines heavier and heavier and making things look even nicer. But it's the move from 30 frames per second to 60 frames per second, which basically means the game runs a lot smoother. Like, it's so much of a difference in a lot of action games, especially. Like, it makes such a difference to the way you play the game. The input lags reduce significantly, and it just feels like a much better experience. Like, now I go back to a 30 FPS game, and I'm like, ugh. Over time you adjust, your brain will sort that out. But those two things in particular have made going back to even old games better. So it's not just a machine that you can play the new stuff on. If there's an old game that you were playing and struggling with, or fancy going through again, you're going to have a better experience the second time through. So I'm planning to do Horizon Zero Dawn again, because they've done a 60 FPS patch for that. So I want to do that before the sequel comes out. I don't know if I have time now, because it's a big old game.
Yeah,
so.
I'm sure you will. It's a little bit of a speed run, because you've done it before, so
exactly.
Why not?
But yeah, those are the two things. I mean, they're still touting 4K and all that stuff, and I think that's great. But those two added things can really make a difference to the way you play the game, like the experience. Like, everything looks about as good as it needs to look these days. I don't know how much closer we're going to get to photorealism. So definitely the upgrade in frames per second, the load times are just like, whoa. And on the PlayStation 5 in particular, I do love the controller.
It looks sexy. It does look sexy.
It
looks
has
smooth, looks easy to handle.
It's got haptic feedback, like vibration. So certain games, you'll be walking over a certain terrain, you'll feel the difference in, like, it'll be like a sandy, like, as you go across the sand, you're like, oh, that's a bit different. Yeah, and then you've got the adaptive triggers, which are sort of mechanicalized, and they will have resistance on them depending on the action. So in Call of Duty, for example, every gun feels different when you pull the trigger. Like, handgun pops a bit easier. You know, a bigger, stronger one, you might have to put it. Some people don't like it because they're like, oh, it just gets in the way of playing. But I always like little things like that. I feel
it adds that little bit of realism to it that you are actually putting the trigger.
It's the only thing you've got to interface with the game. That's the one thing, like, you interface with the game, like, you can be at one with. So anything that improves that is, you know, I'm always a fan of.
And it derives from the Rumble Pack from the N64, because that's where it all started from, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's come a long way.
The big old vibrator.
Yeah.
God, dear. I'm not surprised. They look like sex toys. If you go back and look at a 64 controller, and if you're that way inclined, you could definitely have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. The fun thing is, like, even just the Rumble Pack, but if you take it to, like, a steering wheel, at one point I had a steering wheel set up for, like, sim races. Like, the force feedback you get on that fucking wheel, like, it's like it proper, like, it like brings you into the game. So I love all these, like, hardware things around the consoles and the tech that can just add to your experience. Obviously, you've got things like VR, which are a different kettle of fish.
Well, yeah, I've watched your explanation behind the Oculus Rift, and it was interesting because it just seems like it should be a party piece rather than a permanent investment. And I said to my friends yesterday, I said, that'd be ideal for parties. Rather than you purchase one and then you rent it out.
Yeah.
You make your money back. Everyone, all right, you're not going to get the full extent of it, but it doesn't sound like it's worth anything over than probably a week's worth of gameplay, and then you're probably bored of it after that.
Yeah, it's just not enough true, like, great games on it to make it worthwhile. It's awkward to set up. It's a pain in the arse to put on. Like, if you get hot, it steams up. Like, it's just, I know when it first started appearing, like, virtual reality was going to become a thing with the Oculus, and, you know, HTC Vive did a thing with Valve and whatnot. Everyone's saying this will be the future. We won't be playing with pads or controllers anymore. And as time goes on, I just think that won't happen. I think it's just going to be an alternative. Like, it'll be a side off. Some people really do love it and really enjoy it, but you can't shoehorn a third person game really into it, because motion sickness for some people. Like, it makes people sick. Like, how do you even get over that hurdle for some people?
Well, some of the videos that you put up of people jumping into the TV and stuff, that was fucking brilliant. They'd be rolling up, the kids falling on the floor and that sort of thing. But
don't get me wrong, when you put it on for the first time, it's mind blowing. You're like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, the other thing missing now from my fantasy of, like, when I was little, was like we had floating cars. That's what I assumed we'd have in the year 2000. Yeah. So that's the only thing missing now. We've got these virtual reality things that do the job, but as a hobby, it's just a bit of a pain to just get going. You've got to put sensors up if you want to. The Oculus are doing it right with their Rifts at the moment because they've got the Quest, which is tetherless, no wires.
Okay.
Because another thing is most of this stuff you put it on, there's a great dirty big wire at the back of your head going into your PC. So so you move around, and it's fucking out. You can't go that way. So tetherless is the way to go.
Is that what their rings are for, people?
Yeah, it's the idea of them. But you know, I'm sure they'll get there, and it'll only improve. But whether it'll ever eradicate, we got told this when mobile game was coming. So, consoles are dead. You look at this
Far from it.
No,
Yeah, far from it.
No, you can't get hold of them. So people
true.
still want their on-premises hardware. Same with the streaming. Like there's a lot of streaming going on where you can stream it to your phone or to another device. It's great as an option, but as the sole way to interact with it, people just don't want it.
I can see why. I mean, you stated a pretty good case. The price, you know, the lack of games. Again, that's the only way I could see it working as a party piece. You know, a couple of hours on that, kids would be happy.
Yeah.
You know, well, birthday party or whatnot.
Biff, who comes on our podcast occasionally, he bought a PSVR, and within a couple of weeks, he was pretty much bored of it. But everyone that came round, he was like, "Oh, have a go on this," and they'd all love it for that night. It's like, would you pay another £400 to take it home though? Probably not. Within a year, he'd sold it, he got rid of it.
So speaking of obviously other members, obviously Dimp Digital has been a resounding podcast and lots of different alterations of it over 7 years now. You've been doing this for
6. I
6.
think it was 2014 we started.
Okay,
so,
there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been we started off as just a YouTube-y channel really. I think at the time, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'll go back to 2005. That's when the seed was planted. Because I remember that was when, I think it was 2005. Ricky Gervais, Carl Pilkington, and Steve Merchant did their podcast.
That's right.
They started that, and I thought, what's a fucking podcast? No one really knew what it was back then. That got really popular and funny, and I thought that would be such a good crack to do with like some mates and whatnot. Of course, never did anything. Went out on the piss instead. So.
Yeah, like most of us did.
Yeah, 9 years later, it got to the stage. I remember I got my PS4, and one of the good things about the PS4, it's not the best quality, but it worked, is that you could save 15 minutes of gameplay footage. Didn't need like an expensive capture device. Didn't need to link it into your PC. Just hit save, bang, USB, put it in your PC, it's done. And I thought actually we could do like a low key like YouTube channel here. And then we did. I just put one video up, then put a few more up, and then spoke to a few mates, and I was like, oh yeah, that'd be a good, go and do that. We've just been trying things ever since really. So got the YouTube channel which hosts the podcast and some other videos occasionally. The podcast itself, which is Idle Game Chat, that goes every Monday, audio or video, so you can find it on any of those apps. And then we do a bit of live streaming on Twitch as well. So they're kind of like the three focuses for us.
Is that under Dimp Digital as well, or is that
all
under something else?
Yeah, so all under Dimp Digital. So the way I see it is like you've got this Dimp Digital here, and off that you've got the show Idle Game Chat, you've got a YouTube channel and a Twitch channel as well.
So how many men and ladies are involved in Dimp Digital? Is there many of you?
I think over the course of the years we've had about maybe 15 or 16 involved. I think it's like a core 8 of us that do the Fantasy Gaming League, or 9 including me. I don't play because I'll cheat because I'm doing the
Explain that. What is your Fantasy Gaming League?
So what we do is we get together and everyone has to put together a roster of games, much like you would as a football team. You pick your players that you want, and you need to get 10 of those. No one else can have the same game, so it's got to be 10 unique games across the whole sort of league, if you will. And then each game scores based on their review scores. So we use a site called OpenCritic, which aggregates all the gaming media's sort of opinions, like 9 out of 10s, 8 out of 10s, and it gives it like an aggregated score out of 100. So when I was talking earlier about Cyberpunk starting on a 91,
yes,
that would have got a 91 to start with, and then slowly the score would have dropped down. And at the end of it, whoever's got the most games with all the highest scores, so you tot up everyone's individual scores, who's got the highest total score is the winner. They get to brag about it for a year.
Oh, okay, so that's what Adkins keeps winning, is it?
He wins the quiz.
Oh, okay.
Well, last year he didn't win it, so he's lost it. The first time he ever lost it was a bit salty, but I think last year he was just beaten by Hall. Hall finally won it. He should have won it years ago.
Oh, really?
And he lost it on a tiebreaker the year before with Adkins.
Oh,
so it was it was a bit of a bitter one for him. So the quiz we do once a year, which is in December, and then the gaming league, which runs throughout the year.
Well, so funny, obviously you bring up Hall because when we were kids, I used to now and again knock around with his older brother.
Nathan,
Nathan. So I actually purchased my first Super Nintendo game from somebody else, and that was Nathan. And it was a Ninja Turtles game.
Yeah.
He ruined it. He played it, finished it.
Yeah.
I went round to see Nathan, and he put it on. I was like, oh my god! He was like, you can buy it if you want. So I was like, back to my mum, please, please. Because I was a massive Ninja Turtles fan as well, and I think I'll give him a $5 for it. I think
bargain.
It was, yeah. I think I've still got it in my mum somewhere. We've got a actual cache of Super Nintendo games, but a lot of them were imported. So with the Dimp digital stuff as well, you've mentioned a couple of times through other podcasts that you've tried to change it up. What was the reason for that?
It's my head, basically. I just don't like to... unless something's 100% right, I'm always like, could it be better? Could it be better? I think initially, with the Dimp Digital, I mean, what the fuck is that? Don't mean nothing, but nothing else is called that. That was the important, like, blue sky, come up with something. It's like, nothing else really has that, so that's fine. But then you think about... I mean, at one point, we was, like, semi trying to make it serious. Like, you're thinking about, like, search engine things. Like, it doesn't say game in it. Like, where's the game? So the first podcast we did was just called the Dimp Digital Podcast. Could have been anything.
That's true.
Doesn't mean a great deal. For something that was specific around gaming, it felt like we probably should do that. So we changed it to Idle Game Chat. That was like within a couple of years. I think we got to like episode 73 or something of Dimp Digital. Changed it to Idle Game Chat. Kind of, don't know if it means much, but it's got the word game in it. So we thought, SEOs, they're going to pick it up and it'll be a bit better. Then... I don't know what happened really, that over that time, it's sometimes, because we do it weekly now, and we've been on a pretty good run, take a break now and again for like bank holidays, and I think when the football's on, was like, fuck this, we're all going to the pub. We ain't been out in 18 months, we're all going to go, so we just macked it off, but generally we try and do it week to week, and then we was doing that, and the first run of Idle Game Chat, it just was difficult, sometimes couldn't be bothered, and I was always one of those people. If you're not going to do it properly, don't do it. That's kind of, and it's sometimes to my detriment because you think, well, you should have still just done it now and again, kept engaged and whatnot. So at that point, I think it became clear that it was really tricky to do a weekly podcast and like 2 videos on YouTube, 2 like cut together videos that have been produced. You don't even get time to play the bloody games. If you spend too much time doing the stuff, you're not going to have to play it. And then that's what I noticed, is I was spending too much time. So I thought, if I cut the podcast, I can still do the videos. We'll stop it. Over time, that run its course, and we attempted to do like broaden out. We did like a football podcast over the World Cup for 2018.
Nice.
We did a bit of pro wrestling for a little while. We started getting back into that, so we gave that a little whirl. And it's like, we're kind of just casually doing it. Not really that bothered, and then sort of got the urge really a couple 18 months ago, 2 years ago. Thought I know we can do a weekly one, let's just go for it, and found like a new podcast host as well, which helped streamline a lot of things, and since migrated away from those, and got like some new guys, but all the stuff we learned through that program, it was a paid one, we had to pay for the hosting, but we learned so much about just things like the logo's got to be the right size, otherwise it'll get rejected, all this stuff that you don't really get taught. And then that's where we are now. It's really just a change and a shift in priorities and branding, and a bit of like, let's try something new. I think we're very settled now. Like the last 2 years, it's been pretty settled. Before that, I was always trying to scheme and think, could we change it? Could we do any better? I think really, if you got something that you just leave it. Like, just stick with it. Try and chase whatever you're trying to chase. I don't even know what we was trying to chase.
Well, I think you're chasing sort of perfection to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Because when you look at places like IGN and these other, it seems that it's all bought and paid for, and it's like they're told to blow smoke up a certain game's arse all the time. And there's games that I've played, for example, like Red Dead Redemption, the first one. Yeah. But not a touch on the second one. But everyone raves about the first one more than the second one, and I think the second one's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, I'd look.
Compared to Rockstar bad boy. And it's a shame that the online version was a bit pants. That was the only thing that got me on that.
Yeah.
With the online gameplay that you're doing through Dimp, You've mentioned a couple of times that you get a massive following from India. Is there any reason behind that?
There's not. I don't think there's anything we particularly interesting to an Indian audience. It's purely that we was on the paid for podcast host, which is called Captivate. If anyone wants to try it, you do have to pay for it, but they plug you into all these different territories by default. They plugged as soon as they plugged us into the India one. Not being funny, I think it's the most populated place in the world. So even a fraction of the population is going to be higher. But yeah, it's become a bit of a funny fact that we're just we always say we're Essex's most popular India-based gaming podcast or something like that, really obscure. And it's just strange to see where people are tuning in. It's typically India, UK, and the US are sort of the three big ones, and after that it's a big drop off of of numbers and whatnot. But I'm guessing it's just that we're on the servers and people see it and download it.
And you're regular as well. You're on there every week.
I think that's important for people that don't know you. If you just stumble across something, when's that? Every Monday, mostly. I say every Monday, but everyone has the week off, and we signpost that when it's going to happen. But having a regular slot is also something over the years that I think we've kind of learned is the best thing to do. It's much easier to facilitate in recording and doing the stuff, because it's kind of you're going to do it for this date. Everything's got to be ready by then. It's planned for it. And two, for your audience, they just know that every Monday they'll upload or update their podcast feed, and there'll be a new episode there, and they can just pop it on when they're going to the train or whatever they do, and it's just easier for them as well. I think that's been helpful over the last 2 years, especially.
I've come to notice that I value all of your opinions very much when I'm looking at games now, where I've been pretty much resound to either dealing with Japanese or American sort of game critics.
Yeah.
It was a very much welcome visual experience for me. Well, all right, we know each other, so I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass too much, but where you, Adkins and the other boys all go into so much depth with the games, and as you say on your podcast, the bare meat and bones of what the game is.
Yeah.
It really resonates with me.
Good.
Because the reason being is that I am a hardcore gamer, but I've grown up in the environment of all the boys are all playing football, and hardly anyone's got a console. I used to force Tolly to play fucking PlayStation with me. We used to do all nighters. It'd be like this. Come
on,
mate. Grand Theft Auto 3, I think it was.
Yeah.
We're up all night smoking butt burns out the ashtrays, we've gone out fags, and all sorts of stuff like that. Obviously, the other thing that I've been massively drawn to is the Football Manager stuff. I can't remember the chap's name now. Who's your man on Dimp Digital's Football Manager?
Logan, yeah.
So I've actually started the Universal Vinyls.
I've seen it, yeah.
So it's in its 4th season now.
Yeah.
But I've only been sort of streaming it bits and pieces because I'm very much an amateur, as you've all probably fucking noticed. There's no music, so it's copyrighted. I'm sorry. It's just Football Manager bare fucking videos. Oh god. But it's actually grown legs now.
Yeah.
Where people have now seen that there is prizes. There is actually something to this. So it's not just in fucking about. Because the reason where that come from is from lockdown.
Yeah.
There was no football on. So it wasn't. It was tragic. No one had any outlet for football. You're going back watching Ronaldinho doing all of his skills because you're trying to, get the nostalgia of football back. And I said to the lads at work, I said, I'll do a fucking fantasy league on Football Manager. And I said, I've done a whole transfer. I had fucking paper like that. I've done every team, player, amount. Everyone had £500 million transfer budget.
Nice.
So I had to do all the maths.
How did you do that bit? Did you assign players value, or did you use the in-game values?
The in-game values, nice. Yeah. Trust me, trying to do it yourself would be a right bother. It'd be far so much. But then once you've done the transfer budgets, no one can have the same player. So like you, where you can't have the same game with somebody else.
Yeah.
You can't have Ronaldo in 2 teams.
No.
You can't have Messi in 2 teams.
No.
So then I had to do a draw on who gets certain players. So if someone had Thomas Muller twice, going to a hat, right. Fill me long one. They've got in, and that's one of the names as well. We've got a couple of funny names. Fill me long one. Inchi Anan, I think that's a good one. Leave my Barcelona, that was a good one as well. His badge is my favourite one actually. Got a little bare bum with a sash going across it for his football badge. I was hoping he would win so I could make the shirt, but he didn't. It was shocking, unfortunately. um, but yeah, I must give out a shout out actually to Swaz. So they're the guys that printed the football shirts that I posted yesterday.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, they didn't print the shirts. So Universal Vinyl's doing my printing.
Yeah.
I'm going to be using Swaz to actually bring the shirts to the fourfold, where everybody's going to eventually get a shirt one way or another.
Nice.
And incorporating that, Swaz have basically said, look, it takes 4 weeks to come in.
Yeah.
But we're more than happy for you to obviously promote the product. I'm not asking for anything back because I've got like fucking 3 shirts off of them. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, I want some deals. That ain't happening. But the director of the company, Andy Notman, got in contact with me and said, look, if you want to say stuff about the shirts and the quality, or if there's something bad or good about it, then just say so.
Yeah.
And sorry, Andy, for not using your printing service, but I've already got another man who does my printing. Hence the reason Universal Vinyls.
Yeah.
They sponsor this podcast. They sponsor pretty much everything that I do. I've actually got a new tracksuit coming out. Little plug there, that'll be out today, later on. Yeah, little tracksuit coming.
Lovely.
A little khaki one. Yeah, I've noticed that you've got some Dimp stuff as well that you sell. Is that right? You've got hats and jumpers and stuff.
So we made them for ourselves. We've not actually put anything on the sale. And we had, to be honest, this year we did spend some time trying to get in contact with a few places. A lot of them didn't get back to us. We was like, come on, we'd have bought a few bits. So we have some ideas. But the hat that you'll see, they've just been. Someone bought me that as a present. Actually, that's the thing. Some people have started buying me like making like Dimp stuff and giving it to me, and I'm like, that's actually quite cool. But yeah, we will look at doing that. It's as you know, I mean, it's not easy to organise when you've got a nice partner like Universal Vinyls. That obviously makes things easier.
Well, I can certainly put you in touch with old Mikey because he's a top man. So if you do look at doing something like that, he's local, so he's only around the corner. So. Literally, he's only around the corner. So he's got all the stuff, all the vinyls, all the press, all the clothes. He's got it all there. Gives you a full breakdown. He's even got there's a car club called Sleeper Crew. They've got like 12,000 members, and they're like basically pumping out all of their hoodies and hats and everything. And Mike said to me, he was like, "It's brilliant." He's like, "These guys, I'm not forcing anything upon them. They've got their own store, what goes directly to him." So I'll be looking to do the same thing when I eventually pull my finger out and do my own website. Cause that's the
thing,
idea.
That's the trouble with doing like podcasts or whatever you're doing. Like you realise how much you got to have a social media account, YouTube channel, website. Then you got to run comments through the website. It's not as easy as what people make out. If you want to do it properly, anyway, like I'm sure people could just do
it half-assed,
half-assed and whatnot. But if you want to have a go at it, then there's so much stuff to consider and do. And like you were saying, just setting up the fantasy, football manager league, load of work. Like it is to set up the fantasy gaming league every week. But
it's, I mean, where it's gone to now is the fact that every generation of football manager, I can keep this going. So every time. So now they're so blessed. They've done it so well. So as I mentioned earlier, there was a £500 million budget.
Yeah.
Now it's unlimited. So you can whoever the fuck you want. I haven't got to add up nothing.
No.
So the only thing I've got to derive is who's got the same player.
Yeah.
And then do that. So that's made my life a lot easier. I make all the badges, I design all the kits, I set up everyone's teams based on what they tell me. So a couple of people go, oh well, what's the point? Because you're just going to press reset team and then press play. I was like, if you don't contact me, I will.
Yeah.
You're paying a fiver to try and win this. If you're not going to take it seriously, I'll just go, there you go. And there's some people that don't mind me doing that.
No.
Is it Joe, the geezer who won it, not this year, the year before, he didn't play this thing once. He gave me a setup, the players, and he went, right, just play that formation. Don't get me wrong, he didn't win every game. He won the league by 4 points. But he won the league. It's 60 quid in a shirt.
There you go.
And he did fuck all. There's my mate Andre, who's like literally doing all of the stats and like, oh, this player's good, he's got these numbers, he's got like deep dived into everything. He finished very bottom. So it means unless you get the right tactic for the players that you've got, it ain't gonna work. And I've advised people as well. It's no good you having like 3 Brazilians, 4 Englishmen, 12 Frenchmen, and because they've got to coerce on the pitch.
Yeah.
It goes down as far as that if they don't speak the language, they're not going to play well.
It's such an underrated game, Football Manager. Like the depth of that thing, like it's unbelievable. No game's that deep, really.
No.
When it comes to stats, numbers, and simulating sport or even just a scenario in a game. Like, it's crazy how in depth those games are. And they've just gone from strength to strength.
And rightly so as well. I think I've bought every iteration of Football Manager since it changed from Championship Manager.
Yeah. Champ Manager carried on with different developers. And I
Yeah.
remember I played it and I was like, no,
it's not safe. You can't still use the Windows 98 version
No.
for 2020. It's
No.
not going to work. I've obviously got the 2022 version now. I got it early, the beta version.
Nice.
Little present for my little brother, bless him, Ian. He was like, "Oh, it looks cheaper than it would be when it comes out at Christmas. You can send it to me as a gift on Steam." I was like, good lad. And started off as Nottingham Forest in the Championship, got to top of the league at the moment, which is nice.
Yes.
It's not too sad. I think I've done, 8-9 hours on it. I had a big session on it last night. Good little run. There's more mechanics involved where you're more interacting with your backroom staff now. So you're having staff meetings, you're also having inter-squad discussions, and then you've got to rail your team up throughout the game.
That's it, yeah.
Encouragement, you can berate players on the pitch. Fuck you do it, you know. And that's one thing that I think they've missed from Football Manager is commentary. But you're doing your own.
Yeah.
So have like a little mechanic in there where you just plug your microphone in.
Off you go.
And you do the commentary. Because they do all this, it's like Sky Sports News.
Yeah.
You know, it comes up with your squad list and formation, you know, it says at the bottom in writing, oh, they've got 3 points to win the title.
That's it. Gives you everything you need then.
It pretty much does. I think that the microphone aspect, if you're listening, Elios, get it in there. Sega, get it in there. And it'll make my life easier as well if I could do a podcast with the game, not the stream, and all I could do is plug the microphone. Just about. That'd be a lot easier.
I've like flashbacks of playing like PES and FIFA then when I moved off of that. Like, I'll just sit there, I'll be like, talking as though I'm fucking John Watson, thinking it's fine until I concede a goal. I'm like, fucking hell. that wouldn't pass on the BBC, that one. But
well, to say that, I remember when my mate had it. Xbox. I can't remember which Xbox it was. One of the FIFA games, if you had the Kinect, if you were swearing while the game was on, you would get sacked. Get sacked while you were playing because you heard by
get a
fans.
touchline ban first of all, and then if you kept doing it.
Because I kept doing it while I was playing, he stopped swearing. I was like, why? He said, you'll see in a minute. And it's like literally due to foul out language, you've been fucking gone from your position. I thought that was quite a nice little touch, to be fair.
Yeah.
It was quite good. So you mentioned earlier about wrestling.
Yeah.
What wrestling are you watching?
So I've started watching, or since it pretty much started, AEW.
Good lad. Yes, good man.
So,
and it's fucking good.
It is good. Yeah, I really enjoy it. And I've always, it's one of those things that when I was growing up, I felt like everyone watched wrestling, like Attitude Era. I remember I started, just one of those, like gaming, it was just sort of there. I don't ever remember like something like making me go, cool, I love that. It was just on in the telly and I'll just watch it. I used to love Sting and he's banging it as well. So I was like, a bit old, but you know.
We covers up. Doesn't do Ric Flair with those things, does he?
Exactly. But and then through the Attitude Era, I loved it. Moved over from WCW to WWF at the time. Like Steve Austin was always my guy. Then just sort of fell off it, like didn't really watch it much. Would go back occasionally, had like another stint in 2010, and then it was like, well, I've got Raw and SmackDown. Raw's 3 hours long, SmackDown's 2 hours long, and I was like, it's 5 hours. I can't be doing with that.
And it was fucking shit.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
It was all talk, it was all authority, it was all, John Cena was on every episode of everything. All I wanted to do was just like, sure, there's got to be people that can do the job as well as John.
Yeah.
And I thought CM Punk was going to take that mantle, even though he's not the most.
No, he's not
John.
No.
On the mic, he's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
And I loved it, especially with the Vince McMahon angle.
Yeah.
That sucked me back in.
Yeah, it sucked a lot of people back in.
Yeah, and then it fell on its arse because they didn't see him as champion.
That's it. So it's always, and I was kind of like, I could never go back and watch WWE that much because I just thought it's just not really for me. I've put it on several times and thought I just can't watch this. I don't know what it is. And then like AEW, I saw that it was starting up, and I was like, oh, I recognise a few of those, like Jericho and Cody. I kind of recognise more from old Dustin, Gold Dust.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
and that I thought, you know what, it's something new. They're saying all the right things. Let's give it a go. And honestly, he's been hooked since it started. In October? It's been 2 years now, and I never thought I'd be like getting close to mid-30s and watching wrestling again.
Well, it just shows that you throw enough money at something, it will work eventually.
Yeah.
I don't think Tony Khan's probably made any money out of AEW yet. The amount of stars that he signed, the amount of production value that he's used. I mean, their roster is ridiculously huge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's ginormous, really, when you look at it. Especially with the new, like, they've had CM Punk and Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole come over in like a month.
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus Christ. But no, I'm enjoying it. I think they're doing a really good job. Like, there's always stuff you can pick holes in, but I think just to pop on, you know, on a Thursday or Friday night, bang that on, I'm like, yeah, this is like, I'm enjoying this. Like, it's something I've missed for a long time, like, and not been able to enjoy it.
So who's your main man?
Who's my main man? That's a good question.
Sorry to be misogynistic, but I'm not too keen on the women's wrestling. I don't think it goes as deep as it does.
One thing I would say about WWE is they've done a really good job with their women's stuff.
Like,
yeah, that is. I don't think AEW are close to them on that. There's a couple of good ladies on the AEW side, but generally, like WWE have got a pretty good roster of like wrestlers. It'll come in time. But see, I like people that are a bit lower down the card at the moment. I like Ricky Starks. Yeah, I like Ricky Starks. I like a bit of Christian. Sting, obviously. Darby. Yeah, I think those ones. I like Team Taz a bit. I want to see Hook. I want to see what he's got. I want to see what...
Is it Hook? What's his name?
His son, yeah. Powerhouse Hobbs.
That's it, Hobbs. Yeah, it looks like it reminds me of like another Ryback.
Yeah.
Bit of the beast. My main man on there is one Kenny Omega. I think he does quite well. I've got a small little soft spot for Luchasaurus. I do like a bit of Luchasaurus, only because he's so agile.
Yeah, he's a big fucker, really. But he's good. He's really over as well. The crowd love him.
Yeah.
Since the crowds have come back, I mean, that was the one thing when obviously lockdown and all that. I thought, that'll be the end of them because they're brand new, but they managed to fight through it. Yeah, Luchasaurus is good. Jungle Boy, they've got a good like young set of talent and some really like good veterans as well. Like anything like Bryan Danielson's been in, it's just been gold match wise. Like his matches have been.
Well, he's the epitome of a professional wrestler, isn't he? That's what I've always found with him. I thought that he was always held back in WWE.
Yeah.
I thought the concussion stuff was an excuse because they'd had so many. Well, I think it was only a few years before. Well, Eddie Guerrero died. He was the last one I remember dying.
Yeah, and then you had the old Benoit.
Oh, the Benoit
scenario. He had a lot of concussion issues and whatnot.
I think it's probably more the voids as well.
Oh yeah.
Because I watched a podcast with Kurt Angle the other day, and he said that there's a match I think 3 weeks before Eddie died.
Right.
Eddie was walking around backstage lethargic, holding his chest. But he'd go out to the ring and he'd be Eddie. And then do a lot of cheap steal and everything like that. While they were wrestling, he held on to the bottom right. He's like, I can't do it anymore, I can't do it. He's like, and he's like, fucking come on, I've got a match to finish. And it was a lumberjack match as well. But he noticed then that Eddie couldn't do it anymore.
If you look at like Eddie, just from when he arrived in WWF in like 2000, I think it's 2000 actually, him, Benoit,
it was the invasion, wasn't it?
Perry Saturn come over, and then compare him to like when he won the belt, which is about 5 years later, I think, like the size of him, he's like...
Yeah, it was so
top. Natural. Yeah,
he was doing it to please McMahon.
Yeah, that's the half the trouble.
Big sweaty man. Yes. Did you ever watch that What Culture?
No, I have watched a few of their videos now, and like when they're a bit like
they're a bit silly,
clickbaity. And I'm like, shall I? I will this time.
I did. I think they've got rid of a lot of their old gang. I think there's a couple of new ones on there now. I've watched them for a while.
Yeah.
But they used to say like there is the thing with Vince McMahon, he likes big, sweaty men, and I think that's the reason why they're so hot on the drugs thing now at WWE. Because there's so many have died. I mean, your namesake, your dog.
Yeah,
David Boy Smith.
David Boy Smith, he went as well.
There's an interesting story behind that, actually, with David Boy Smith. I actually went to SummerSlam '92 at Wembley Stadium. I was there, and a few of my other friends told me they were there as well. But
I tell you what, I speak for everyone reckons they were there.
Yeah.
I think some people are fibbing.
Potentially.
I'm not saying you are, but
I've got the program, I've got the ticket, and I've got the Legion of Doom
I was like, SummerSlam. I was like, what did you? He wasn't even born, mate.
Mark Bang got from some dodgy geezer, I don't know where he got them from, but it was like, damn boys, it was like fucking happy days.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And the final match was whereas it's one before. So British Bulldog versus Bret Hart.
Yeah, Bret.
Obviously, it went off and British Bulldog won. British Bulldog had been missing for 2 weeks prior to that match. Oh, you know about it? Yeah, cocaine binge. Had one of the best matches of all time. And then they took the belt off him afterwards. And it sounds like it's rightly so, but that ending to that fucking... That they had the fireworks going off. They had like all of the family in the ring. They're all shaking hands. They had absolutely everything. It was absolutely momentous. My favourite part of the whole thing though was Legion of Doom, because I was a massive Legion of Doom.
You heard the story about that match and Hawk?
No, go on.
So I've read. I don't know if you've read Bret Hart's book, but
No,
it's very good. Like out of all the wrestling books, that's the one I'd recommend. Like it's so good. It goes through. Obviously, we had the Montreal screw job. He goes through all that. You know, blah blah blah. But he tells a story in there about Hawk was. You know, back then, a lot of the guys were on pain pills.
Yeah.
Make you a bit drowsy. He was a state. He said he looked at Hawk's eyes. He's like, "You all right?" And he was like, "Yeah, brother." Jumped on his bike and he said, goes off. If you actually watch the match back now, he doesn't do anything. Like, he is completely zoned out of the match. He's completely and utterly off his face. That's another thing. Not just the steroids back then, like the pain pills as well. A lot of them got addicted to all that shit. I mean, we don't really have it over in the UK. I don't feel like you can't just go over the counter and get this stuff. But in America, they can get prescribed like.
They've got a massive drug problem out there with prescription drugs at the moment. It's pretty telling. And where it's obviously you look at the society of America, and everything's so corporatized and everything's pushed on you. Like every advert's for a fucking drug company.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals. And
so it's not a surprise that wrestlers go down that avenue. It's that close to them. But I haven't watched WWE for ages. I used to have the network, but as soon as they started pushing Roman Reigns as a champion, I couldn't take it. Poor man's Aquaman, it's just not working. Now he's called something called Bloodline.
Head of the table or something,
Yeah, it just sounds like blood bullshit. Paul Heyman looks like he's there by force rather than by choice. And they've dropped the ball again by not making Brock Lesnar champion, because he's the only legitimate bloke in that company that could kick the fuck out of everybody.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's interesting. I've still got the network actually, because I actually started watching. Oh, year I started like '96 WWF, and I'm in like year 2000 now. I've just been going back watching old Raws and Smackdowns.
Okay, nice.
It's about as good as I remember. It's great still, but I'm coming to that part where the invasion starts, and that's where I actually started falling off. When they done that, they started doing the invasion angle with like Goldberg and Sting were all missing because they had them in different contracts, and I was like, Just Incredible's not a main event.
Not even Perry Saturn, really.
No.
Dean Malenko was only there because of his technical ability, but he's never going to be champion. He was a cruiserweight in WCW. The NWO was a massive miss in the invasion angle. They killed that. Alright, they might have been off their heads 24/7, which they were. Poor old Scott Hall, bless him. Speaking of Scott Hall, did you watch any of the DDP stuff, the yoga?
Yes, yeah.
Inspirational stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, like he's had him and Jake the Snake go through there, like rehabbing them. Like I've done that program like, on and off for years now. Like it really is good for just like back and like pain thing. But he takes them in, gives them something to focus on, like rehabilitates these blokes who, you know, they were going down they were well past the point of like no return in most cases. So it's really good stuff. Like if people want to watch inspirational stories about coming back from the brink, DDP. Why is the place to go?
That was, I mean, not just with what he done with the two wrestlers because they were his friends, but I mean, just the general public. The guy that was a paratrooper, I nearly cried my fucking eyes out when I saw that man running. How's he managed that? Just from a bit of yoga. And it absolutely baffles me how he's kept in such good shape as well. He's pushing 60. He must be in 60s now.
I think like what his ethos is correct. Like. You want your body to be flexible so you don't injure yourself. So you can keep, if you're younger and doing sport, less injuries, you can carry on doing that. And as you get older, obviously you tone back like the intensity, but you always want to keep your body moving and keep yourself flexible. You have less back and pain issues and all that stuff. Like, you know, I always wake up sometimes and I think, oh, bloody hell. In bed and get a new mattress. It's not the mattress, I'm sitting there hunched over like that all bloody day. But Yeah, I would recommend, like, if you're having any trouble, like injuries. I don't know if you remember when we played football. I done my hamstring in, and that was pretty much the end for me. I haven't played properly since.
I haven't really, mate.
No, that was a good crack, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. We did play for a local pub team called the Castle, ragtag bunch of a couple of people with talent. The rest just hanging on the coattails, pretty much, was it? I mean, my day was gone as a goalkeeper. I mean, I should never have got back into football. But my uncle Brian was the manager. He sort of, come on, then, keep on. I was like, all right. I think there was one game we played in Southend where I actually begged the referee to blow the whistle. I think we were like 8-0 down after 50 minutes. I was like, ref, come on, we've all had enough.
Yeah.
I think Smithy was probably the standout.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Funny enough, I've seen that earlier.
Yeah.
Smithy,
That's it.
but the rest of us, I think, obviously Tolly as well. Tolly was in there for a couple of games, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think Fitzgibbon played for us.
Fitz did, yeah. He played centre half or full back.
Yeah.
He was there. Stubbo in the middle.
Yeah,
little Lee Hatley.
Yeah.
Little engine that could. didn't stop running. Even on like 3 hours sleep from the night before, we'd all been out.
Brilliant. Yeah, and that ended up folding because I think the old subs was going down the boozer, wasn't it? The old subs were given to the manager, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Paying for it. As well. Yeah, but I think I went a few years later. I went back and played for Ashington.
Okay.
And I had 3 or 4 games. And do you know when you watch George Foreman box?
What, when he's older? He's
I was kicking myself because I think in his second game, I saved the penalty.
Nice.
And I was all like, yeah!
You were good at stopping penalties. I'm sure you stopped more than you let in on our season with the Castle. We used to give away a fair few.
Yeah, I think that was my little trait, like long shots and penalties, like set pieces I weren't too good at, but don't ask me to come and get the ball or catch it from the corner.
They'll go straight in, those ones.
Or under my body or something stupid. But that was always the thing with me. I had the ability to be a good shot stopper, but I could never read the game.
Right, yeah.
Brain would always be elsewhere. There was times when I was like, Bridgie! I'm like, you know, fucking well. Cheers, mate. You know, I had loads of like embarrassing moments like that. What is it? There was one match I played for the school. Some poor old Steve Sharp, bless him. He was the goalkeeper for the team, and Poxon was as well. We had loads of good goalkeepers in our year.
Rare.
Neither of them were there. And Mr. Jones came and got me, went bridge me a keeper. I was like, I don't really want to be doing this. I haven't played with any of these boys. So all right, I'll do it. We played King John. And there was this young lad called Max. He was known to everybody in the outside footballing world. He was a good little player.
Yeah.
His dad used to manage the team for the school and for the weekend club. So he's come running through. I've literally got PE goalkeeper kit on, so I've not even got my own. So I've everything I had in my gloves and my boots. So I've second-hand top, second-hand top, second-hand shorts.
Soaked in someone else's sweat and shit.
Shin pads as well working for mine.
Yeah, I just use something else's. Right, so this young lad's coming through. I'm my own little world. Fuck, he's there. So I've gone running out. I've tried to do a Peter Schmeichel, but it's gone wrong. So instead of springing my legs and sitting my arse, I put my legs together and sat my arse. I broke the ball kind of shin pad. Yeah, I thought I broke his leg. The old man's on the side of the pitch. Hey, he should be off! He should be off! Get him off! The ref went, I'll be careful this time, lad. And I saved the penalty. It's the worst. So that's. I say poor Steve Sharp because we won the league that year.
Right.
And where I only played one game, everyone got called up in the sports centre at the time. Like, here we go, handing out all of the trophies for the winners. And Sharpie weren't there. He's gone, where's Steve? Like, he's not here today, sir. Well, more for him. Bridge, you played one game. Fucking spitting feathers. He's like, you don't even deserve that. You broke someone's leg. Yeah, again, I think I did let another stick, but that's right. Someone passed the ball back to me, I went to kick it and missed it. Yeah. That's an age-old trait of mine I used to do. I was never good at goal kicks. Yeah.
No.
Amazing now, I've got so far playing football. It's only good at catching, don't give a fucking kicking.
Not nowadays.
No.
Nowadays, you've got to be half a midfielder to play.
Oh, mate. Yeah, you literally, the balls that you've got to play from the back are useless. 5-a-side, I'll be alright.
Yeah, that's actually, I did play a bit of that afterwards, but 11-a-side, not since I played half a season for like Shrewsbury Boys after that, and I was like, they had like 9 players each week, and I was like, this ain't worth it. Like, at least spend 11 at the castle.
I'm not even that enthusiastic about being here.
No, yeah, exactly.
People here.
No.
So with the Dimp digital stuff,
Yes.
I wanted to ask you whether you guys would be thinking about going to some sort of Gamescom and filming it there.
Yeah, so COVID's knocked everything out. I imagine next year there will be stuff to do, whether it'll be, for us to be able to actually go, I don't know. We have actually there's one video we did where we went to EGX Res. It was at the old tobacco docks.
Okay.
So they were small. So in the UK, they did run, I don't know if they're still going to do it. They used to run EGX, which was like the UK sort of biggest sort of gaming thing, and that used to be in London. Now it's in Birmingham, I believe. Or at least it was. And then they do like a little smaller one called EGX Res, and they did one of those in London. So we did go to that and did like a little blog. Mr. Paper put that together, like edited it, filmed it, done all the good stuff. It's just a little like wander around. We would definitely be interested in doing it. It's just that the opportunities just haven't been there for the last couple of years. And going forward, I don't know. Trouble with things like that is they don't have it for a couple of years, sometimes they go for good.
Oh, really?
They can just disappear because the funding's just not there. Like if you don't run it, you're not getting any money in. So I don't know. Maybe there'll be something to come. I'd love to go to like Gamescom, which is in Germany.
Yeah.
I'll just go for the piss up, to be honest. But a nice side of games as well. But yeah, always it's interesting to go to those places. Queuing's horrendous though. That is just. It's in a way I would kind of just recommend people just to stay away unless you're. I don't like theme parks for that reason. Like queuing's just like I can do it for a little while, but for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, it's a pain in the backside. Because we did go to Big EGX one year. We actually went up to Birmingham. Smithy come with us that year. He didn't go for the second day because he was too hungover. So yeah, he got on the train. He was like sweating. It was like, you're right. And he's like, I ain't gonna go, lads. He's got off the train with like a minute. Yeah, went. He just wandered around Birmingham for the day. But yeah, we went to that, and like, the one thing I think we queued for like nearly 2 hours. It was just like you only get 7 hours there, and you're playing like pre-builds of games. So how badly do I want to play these games early? Like that's the thing. It's cool going though, seeing all like the setups when they've got like a nice like a big Sega stage with like all like the old characters up, or they've got like an event going on. That's all worthwhile going. But to go there and get hands on, I don't know. I feel like some of them are going to move towards like demos and go back that way. Do virtual stuff where they haven't got to pay for all the premises stuff. But yeah, we'll definitely look to go to one if we feel like it's going to be worthwhile and a good crack for us.
Well, considering the amount of European developers there are across all platforms with Xbox and PlayStation, I'm surprised they don't do more E3 stuff here.
Yeah, that is. It's, the thing with E3 is it's an American funded set-up operation, so it's all set up for them, for California, blah blah blah, do all that stuff there. Which we've kind of got Gamescom, which actually has more people go to it. Like football, Gamescom beats out E3.
Okay.
But as you know, everyone wants their game to be on the E3 showcases and on the show floor. That's like where all the media congregate, because most of the media is situated in California, on the west coast of the United States.
Silicon Valley and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the main trouble there. But Gamescom's probably close to that. But it depends what you're going for. Are you going to play the games, or do you want to know what's happening in the industry? And E3's, has struggled the last 2 years. So who knows what the future holds?
Anything to go by that latest release that they done. What was the thing they brought out the other day? Loads of trailers for loads of crap games.
What, PlayStation or?
Yeah, PlayStation.
State of Play.
Oh my god, what a load of old that was.
It wasn't very good. The only thing I will say in its defence is it was only 20 minutes.
Thank God.
I've sat through things that are an hour and a half that are just as bad, and I'm like, that's offensive. 20 minutes, like, I've taken a shit that's taken longer than that. I can kind of sign off to wasting 20 minutes here and there. It's not too egregious, but when you get to like 45 to 50 minutes to an hour, I'm like, I expect something big. Thing is though, 6 weeks ago, what did they show? Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, Project E. They've done a big showcase then, so I kind of feel like my expectations were in check. Like I knew that they'd shot their load, for lack of a better term, and that this was going to be just obligations to marketing.
Well, you say that, but I mean, they didn't really fucking show anything, especially with the Wolverine one. I'd rather them have just not done anything because it's pissed me off because there's no gameplay.
Yeah, that is a good point.
There's too much of this trailer nonsense where you're not seeing any gameplay. It's just got to get rid of all that.
I agree. I think with Wolverine, the reason why they did it is because it's Wolverine. You couldn't do that with Game X or Game Y. It doesn't mean anything to anyone.
No.
Wolverine's a well-known IP product. You can get away with that, and everyone's like, "Oh, the guys that made Spider-Man are doing that." That's sort of.
Oh, is that right? Is it?
Yeah. So
not the Avengers developers then.
No, thank God.
I've nearly bought that, and a friend of mine bought it for his son, and he said he fucking hates it.
Yeah, he dodged a bullet on that one.
And when it first came out for the trailer, I was quite looking forward to that, but it goes back to what I was saying about Square Enix earlier. There's too much Square Enix in too many games,
Yeah.
and it ends up ruining it, unfortunately. So, when you helped me start this up,
Yep.
because you did, when I mentioned to everybody I was going to do my own podcast, you were on the old wire, like, okay, I'll give you some tips. You've got to use this, OBS, you've got to use that. And I'm still using it today, so thank you for that.
That's no problem.
We've obviously kept in contact here and there throughout the pandemic, keeping in touch with what we were doing.
Yep.
As you can appreciate, me and Apps aren't in each other's pockets every 5 minutes.
No,
And but you've gone out of your way to help me out.
I have.
There's something that you've brought along today for me, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
And I've been eagerly waiting for this. It's been absolutely look fucking look at that!
PlayStation 5,
Oh,
the social monkey's very own PS5. Don't drop it.
No. I'm going to put it on its side
Yeah.
just because I can't see your face. There he is. We'll put it there just for a minute. Lots of people have been after these.
Yes,
And
yeah.
it's an absolute dream to have this in front of me now because how long have these been out now? 2 years?
No, less than a year.
Less than a year.
So it'll be a year and a couple of weeks they've been out.
The hype behind it has been pretty big though.
It's been impossible. Like, it's been one of the hardest things to get hold of, like, electronically for a long time. Like the PS4 by this stage, you could get one. Like, by January, February, March, you was getting. Now we're coming up to a year, like we just said, and still, you just can't. It's so hard to get hold of these. Like, unless you're saddo like me, who's.
Hey, don't knock yourself. Hey, Christ, there's nothing sad about getting hold of one of these bad boys. And there's so many people that I've spoken to, like, how have you got hold of that? And I was like, well, I've got man in the know. It's like, well, it's not like I've done this overnight. I've had to save the money to try and get this, and everything else that goes along with it. And when you said if you're in the market for one, potentially we could have one in 6 weeks, I was like, brilliant,
Yeah.
lovely. And lo and behold, a week later, he's like, oh, Amazon, I've got one ready for you now if you want it. I was like, got half a chubby and started getting all excited with the missus. She was like, I might as well make the most of it because I ain't going to see much of you on that fucking place. It was like, no, you're not, love, you're not. But she's quite interested in playing a couple of games on here as well. So is there any sort of games that you would recommend for first-time players with this?
Tell you what, it comes bundled. It'll be installed when you boot the thing up.
Yeah.
Astro Playroom, I think it's called now. It's the Astrobot game that's on the PS5.
Okay.
It's like a 3D platformer, light touch. It uses the control mechanics that I was talking about earlier with the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedbacks really well. That's like a showcase for it.
Okay.
It's not difficult. It's good fun. She'll probably find the little robot quite cute. I'd actually recommend that's the first thing I'll put on. Just 'cause it's there day one. You haven't got to download anything. And give that a go. Like it's underrated game. Like for packing games, like you normally think it's normally crap. Like it comes on it and you're like, that's okay. I'll play a real game in a bit. But that's a really good one, and it'll be there as soon as you power the boy up. So
Lovely. That'll keep her happy then, because we're both working nights at the moment. So when you get home, have a little play around with that. With the, I sent you a little link yesterday of I don't know if you can see the colouring behind that on my seat there. I've actually seen a PlayStation 5 controller which mimics the Social Monkey's colours.
yeah,
It looks sexy as fuck, but I think I've been trolled again. I really do. I want it to be real, or so do, but there's too many people behind the video.
Yeah.
It makes it look like they've just put LED on the video.
Yeah.
So PS5 or PlayStation, if you're listening, we want a social monkey pad, please.
Yeah.
We want a social monkey, same colour, that nice little goldy orange colour,
That's it.
and that hopefully we'll be streaming on this soon. A friend of mine, Jaguar Snakes, does his own streaming through PS4.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you actually, what would you say would be the best way for me to stream this? Would you say it'd be through Twitch or YouTube?
It depends, because we talked about briefly earlier about all the things you have to manage when you put something like this together, like the Social Monkey podcast. If you have the capacity to manage another thing in Twitch, I would say that's the way to go, just because it's a bit more of a mature platform. But YouTube in itself has an audience. Like if your audience comes to Social Monkey channel, then why move it? Is another way of looking at it. The only good thing about Amazon at the moment, at least, until they pull the plug on this, which I'm sure they will do one day, is that when you get to a certain stage, you become an affiliate with certain requirements you meet. But that lets people subscribe to your channel. Doesn't cost them anything if they've got Amazon Prime. And it gives you £2.50, whatever it is, a month. So for monetization, that's a really easy way, because like every fucker's got Amazon Prime these days, like, or at least had it. So that's we use it just because it integrates nicely with OBS, and we've typically found that's where it's kind of been two different audiences. Like there's a live streaming audience that come and watch our streams that we do, like occasionally, same people in there. And there's different people in the comments on YouTube that are slagging us off in there. So they're always joking. Well, most of them are. But that's the kind of two different, like people that watch stuff on demand are different to like being there, because they want to interact with you on Twitch. But YouTube's getting better. What I would say is that Twitch is getting a bit complacent, and I feel like YouTube have got they've got a lot of money behind them. If they want to make a play, they can. Yeah. So for ease, maybe YouTube's best for you.
Well, I've got it all set up for YouTube anyway.
Yeah.
The transition from your PS4 stuff to the PS5, is that pretty simple?
Yeah. So all your anything disc-wise will just go into this and work. Anything digital will just be in your library, just download it. Brilliant. They've ironed out a lot of the kinks with that. There was definitely some teething problems with things like that, like game saves. I think Final Fantasy might be a pain to move your save over. You have to like open. So download the PS4 version on your PS5, open it, upload it to the cloud, download the PS5 version, download it from the cloud, pop it into the...
It sounds like Paul, but
yeah, you'll get through it.
I'm going to have to do it.
Yeah, so there's things like that, but generally it's better transition than the PS3 to the PS4 because of backwards compatibility. I mean, you can go back to your games aren't just lost. For the PS3, it's like, well, I'm resetting here.
Does it take PS4?
Yeah,
it does. It takes PS4 discs.
Yeah, it'll stop those in. It should, if they've got a patch that's included, it will download that one as well. So it should optimise it. One question I had for you.
Yes, sir.
Why the PS5? Why not the Xbox? Because that's another platform out there. Is it just something that you've just grown up with and always had PlayStation, or is it specific games like Final Fantasy?
It's the games.
Yeah.
Xbox games don't interest me at all. I don't play a lot of shoot 'em ups like Halo, Battlefield, Call of Duty. I'll play them, but it'll be like I'll wait until they're like £5 in CEX and then I'll go and grab them. See what they look like. I'll do the same with FIFA. I won't pay no more than £2 for any FIFA.
No.
Because it's pointless. Because by the time I buy it, Wayne Rooney's already managing Everton. Ollie Solskjaer's had the sack and he's no longer United, but he's still there.
Yeah.
It makes no odds. But I've had Xboxes in the past. I've got stung with the ring of death. Stung with that. But what I've done was I've done the stupid thing and fixed it myself.
Put it in the oven?
No, I took it apart, cleaned it, put it back together again, and it worked. Only worked for a couple of months and it died again, and it just ended up in bin. So I couldn't be bothered. I can't bother with the aggro of sending shit back, asking for warranties, because I know it's a ball ache with Microsoft.
Yeah.
They want the ins and outs of the duck's arsehole.
Yeah.
And I'm not prepared to do that. I've already shelled out shitload of money for your console.
Yeah.
I'm not doing all of this again.
Yeah.
Whereas PlayStation always has the majority of the Square Enix games on there. Other games, like Rockstar games, are pretty much on PlayStation, not as much on there. And to be fair, I've never really got on with Xbox that well. Not really. I know other people have. I've always seen it as more of the child's console compared to the PlayStation. Not being derogatory towards any Xbox players, because I'm sure there's some good games that everybody enjoys. But
Yeah.
like the Games Pass that they've got on there, it seems it's very tailored to kids or the younger generation. Whereas PlayStation, I've always looked upon it as like, right, that's a bit of kit that everybody can use. The wife can use it, the little can use it, I can use it, and it's not just for games. You've got also the other video platforms. It takes Blu-ray discs for DVDs.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Xbox One probably does as well.
Yeah.
I've just always found that I've never had problems with PlayStation. It's always been an Xbox.
Yeah, that's fine. It's interesting, you know, where people kind of lean towards, and it is usually over experience. That's why it's so important that when these things land, they don't fuck. I'm sure there's faulty PlayStations out there that people have had issues with, but you can only go by what you've experienced and whatnot. The Game Pass thing is interesting though, because there's a shitload of games on there.
Yeah.
And it's like a Netflix. It's a completely different idea, and that's something that I can see changing way people kind of like developing some games. I don't know whether Sony will ever do it. My suspicion is they won't, because it's too expensive for them just to pour money into.
It's not money, is it?
Microsoft they've pumped loads of money into it, hoping that over time they'll have enough subscribers to sort of maintain it. But
again, it's only going to be kids really that are going to have time to play it.
yeah,
Because again, with the Game Pass, I've got a PlayStation Plus, so I get free games from PlayStation anyway. For example, I've got to download, say it's Titles, it's £2.20.
oh yeah.
I've been playing around with that just for a laugh. The only thing that's missing is the old power button. Just that one, doing that. I find that the PlayStation Plus offers me more, because it seems that I get offers for games that are tailored more to what I play.
That's important though, isn't it? Because there's as time's going on, more and more games are becoming exclusive to one platform or the other. Either Microsoft are buying a studio, or Sony are buying a studio, or Sony are saying to Square Enix, we'll bung you a load of cash here, make sure Final Fantasy 7's only on PlayStation, and we don't know how long that's for. Remake 2 7 remake still nowhere else to be found other than on a PlayStation.
It's on Steam now, I think. Isn't it?
No,
I thought it was on Steam.
not yet.
No?
Well, you'd expect that after a year, but it's been over a year now.
Oh.
It's things like that matter, because you're not going to want to sit there and wait a year to play Final Fantasy 16.
No.
You want to play that as soon as it's out.
It pretty much I will be a fanboy of that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've had every Final Fantasy game that's come out, barring what was the Crisis Core?
Yeah.
I never got that. So it looked like shit. We got burned with Secret, so I didn't buy that. But I've noticed with 16, it's gone back to Final Fantasy 1 and 2.
Right.
So the actual Eidolons that you're getting, or the summons,
Yeah.
actually fucking mean something this time.
Ah.
Because in Dissidia and in Final Fantasy 7, there's sort of additional characters that are just a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Right, Leviathan's a fucking great snake that goes down. That's a bit different. But what I saw in the trailer with Shiva and Titan going at it
Yeah.
in the middle of a fucking war,
Yeah.
you're not going to fight those beasts. I know God of War, it's sort of that's a bit different. That's a different lore and different story and whatnot. But I can't see that single character going up to Titan with his sword going. And for it to be legitimate, it's not going to work. So there's going to be, I think it's the Legacy of the Crystals, I think it's called, or something like that. And actually having to fight an iteration of something from the crystal, or the person that controls the crystal, which I think what that young lad's all about. It'd be interesting to see how many other summons they're going to have, because there's about 25 different summons in Final Fantasy. And you've got the likes of Odin, you've got the Knights of the Round, and you're going to fucking love that material when that comes out next month. Knights of the Round. I mean, you've got a lot of shit ones like Carbuncle, which is basically my dog with a diamond in his head. So I don't know, that dog has piped up. And with the other one as well, there's one called Alexander.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Alexander summon? So it's basically a castle that moves. You summon this fucking great castle that just shoots these missiles from the fucking turrets and all shit like that. There's one called Atmos where it sucks in everybody's like sorry for spoilers, but this has sort of been out for ages. Different fucking summons. What's the other? There's another good one as well. Triple cut materia. That's the one I'm looking forward to. So do you know when you do you switch from Tifa over to Cloud?
Yeah.
In the OG games, there's a materia called double and triple cut. So every time you slash an enemy,
Yeah.
you'll do it 3 more times from one go.
Right.
So if you add that onto an ATV bar,
Yeah.
you start to deal with your fucking lightning.
And you'll do it 3 lots worth of.
So you can imagine how complex the gameplay's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did you get on with the material in that actually?
It was overwhelming, but I felt like it's easy just to try and be like, oh, I have to do the new. I just stuck with what I was good at and what was working for me. You know, make sure I've got someone with a lot of healing material because I was always fucking on my arse going down. So, and it was just a case of sticking to what I know and leveling up those ones that I was good at. And then once I was, you know, just in a zone with like normal enemies, I'd experiment a bit more and think, oh, well, maybe that would work. But when it comes to like the tough stuff, I was like, right, I need to get just what I'm comfortable with here.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the most efficient way of doing it, I know I can get the job done if I'm, you know, moving around and doing what I need to do.
Well, that's what I found that it was nice to be able to chop and change it.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I've done like 140 hours plus. I think you might even be more.
Yeah.
How simple bosses can be once you
Yeah.
play around with it. Spoiler alert again, sorry. But if you fight Hellhouse in the arena, if you sit there and you hit it with bio straight away,
Yeah.
kill the fucking thing within minutes.
Oh right, it's got a weakness towards.
Yeah, because it's because it's a mechanical house with arms, you don't think it's a living thing.
No.
So you throw bio at it and it just fucking slowly kills it.
Ah.
And rather than you spending 2 hours trying to battle the fuck out of it, because it's really fire, ice,
Yeah,
light, and
yeah.
switch it around, murdering you with the chairs coming down from
Yeah.
the gantry. You know, which, I mean, I don't know how they pulled that off. I mean, someone's got a fucking good idea about the two bosses. That was brilliant. That boss fight, but it did fuck me off. I was stuck. Well, I come downstairs about 3 in the morning. Are you still fucking trying to? She said, can you at least stop swearing at the telly? It's like we can all hear you, and I'm sure the neighbours can as well. I'm well guilty of upsetting the neighbours for my dog shouting, I'm going to lose. I'm a loser. But yeah, I was so bad. That's why I don't play FIFA.
No, yes, that's an awful one. I'm an awful one for that. So I haven't played it for a long time, but I remember I'd be at my parents and they'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "Trying to win." You don't understand.
Yeah.
It's a big game.
How long have I played this game for? That's what I'd say to my missus. I said, I've spent fucking hours playing this game.
Yeah.
Don't interrupt me while I'm not there. I'm at the end like that. Yeah, I don't. And she's like, so weird.
The annoying thing with that is when you think, right, once I've done this, it's the end. And it ain't.
No. Carry on.
Yeah.
But she's done it a few times. She's tried to talk to me, and I'm like, just no,
Yeah.
don't. And then I'll get the answer. Do you know what she says to me? Game?
Oh.
Oh, mate, do you know what? I want to headbutt more. I really do. It's not, I've spent so long. Imagine if you spent 5 hours doing your hair, and then someone else comes up and, you know, a fucking lovely curly flow on it now, just like Alan Davis, you know what I mean?
I can relate.
Yeah.
I've been there. I'll probably be there at some point this weekend.
What's happening with your guests on your podcast? Because I've noticed that it's Adkins quite a lot. But the other boys not signing up for it.
No, what it is it's a symptom of doing weekly as well. Not everyone can commit to weekly. Like Adkins, luckily, he's a sad bastard like me, so he enjoys the fame. I think the fame in India that he's getting. I think they're going to put a shrine of him up soon. At least I hope so. Yeah, but no, it's timings. It's planning out what we're going to talk about because we usually record every Sunday evening. Just some people can't always do that, so. You know, it's the other boys. We've got Logan on 2 weeks in a row because we went really long, so I just cut it into 2. So a little bit of a weekend off for me, which I wouldn't normally have. But yeah, like we do. Adkins is about as deep in the weeds with the industry stuff as I am, so we can always revert to that. And it's like, what has everyone else been playing? Okay, Paper's been playing that New World MMO. He likes the MMOs. Once he's done enough, I mean, when is enough though? We'll get him on to talk about that. So it's when there's specific cases there, and we'll pull people on.
I did actually apply to go on to a test game. It was from Banco.
Oh, is it Elden Ring? Is it?
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, I've applied to see if I can get on the test game server for that.
Yes.
They haven't got back to me yet, though, but they emailed me, so I think I've got a couple of Bandicoot games I've played already. And
That is.
it looks really good.
Have you played any of the?
No.
So you've got Dark Souls. They're the ones that did 1 to 3, and Bloodborne on the old PS4.
That's right. I haven't played any of those.
They are hard. They are very hard games, and they're designed to be difficult. But the satisfaction of getting through one of those is up there with like one of the top sort of like achievements in there. But they're very difficult games, and Elden Ring's going to be their newest take on it. They've had George R.R. Martin. He's written the lore, like the base sort of lore for it, so it's probably going to be interesting from that perspective. But be prepared. The tagline for Dark Souls is "Prepare to die." Yeah. You need to prepare that you're going to get your ass kicked.
No, I've played either of those games. I think it's against to a time constraint that I've got.
Yeah.
Because I normally I'll buy one game and I'll play the arse out of that.
Yeah.
So I can't get any more out of it.
That's the way to do it.
I've given away, what games? I've given away 15.
Yeah.
Redemption 2, because there was nothing left for me to do on it.
How long do you spend on those two?
FF15 I completed in its entirety, but I didn't do it on the Royal Edition. I done because I bought it the day it came out, and I got pissed off because they went, "Oh, episode Noctis, no, episode Gladio, 3 episodes." Then they done an older one. I thought, "Cheap."
Yeah, chapters, weren't they? Or 4 chapters.
Off. I spent 60 quid getting the original,
Yeah.
Royal, and all this other sexy shit they throw on. So I thought, "No, fuck you, I'm not doing it." But
Even on the Raw one, there's one missing. You have to buy it separately.
you're joking.
What's the fella name? There's not the bad.
Yes. Oh, well, Arden. That's
Yeah, that's it. His chapter. So the important one to fucking pay $5 for.
No, and with 15, there's a boss that not many people have done.
Is that the one that you need to be like level 90? I can't remember what it is. I remember I went to it and I was like, I'm like 40 levels off this. I'm like, I'm not.
It's not right. Did you have to fly there in a car?
No.
So
There's another one.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert. So, if you haven't done the game. So, once you complete the original game, it finishes, you get to go back onto the world map.
That's it, yeah.
Full character and see if you can go back and do any bosses you've not done yet.
Yeah.
Now, once you've got your flying car, there's a spot on the map.
Only accessible from the flying car, I
Yes. Right. There's a small runway in between 2 mountains. And you land there. Now, if you don't land to stick the landing, blow the car up and you immediately die. So that's the first difficult part. So you stick the landing, and then you have to go up into this cave. There's no map for this cave, right? So you go in there, and it's full of fucking shit hot monsters that you can't fucking beat.
Yeah.
But I managed to get to the end, and you get this basically a piece of armour which is pretty much impenetrable.
Yeah.
But it takes around 2.5 hours to get through this maze because there's no map. You have to literally go. Right, I've been there already. Go around the back here, and you're literally stuck in a maze for hours.
Did you ever use a walkthrough, like guides or anything for games?
Try not to.
I tried to as well. Yeah.
Unless
It's weird, isn't it?
Unless I get I've got tell you what, 15. I did get the guide because my mum bought it for me for Christmas. I've got the leatherback guide.
They're quite nice actually. Those little added pieces.
Well, they're quite big actually. I think it's the same size as that. I do like getting me little bits and pieces. I was going to show you actually. I actually made a clay model of Clown Storm.
Oh,
I put it downstairs. I should have brought it up to show, but the hand was a bit ropey, but the rest of it looks
pretty good.
Well, ish for an amateur person like me. Oh, well, fucking hell, we've nearly been going for 2 hours, my old son.
Well,
we're doing all right, aren't we?
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to cover?
I don't think so. You've got PlayStation Plus, you say.
Yeah.
Another good thing, last thing on the PS5, it comes with about 15 or 20 PS4 games that you might not have standard. Like one of them's God of War, and all that. So it's called the PlayStation Plus Collection. So find that, and there's I think Final Fantasy 15 Raw editions in there. Funnily enough, that's what I played it on. Monster Hunter World's in there. You've had the can worms there. I played the fuck out of that on the way. The first. I've played World. That was my first one, and I've done 90 easy. 90 hours easy.
I think I ended up getting to I think it's the final island on Monster Hunter where there's a volcano.
Right.
And you've got a fucking volcano dinosaur that you've got to chop up.
Right.
I think I'll give that a miss. I think I'll fuck that off eventually. So, plug in. want to plug your bits. So, have you got a podcast going out Sunday? Monday?
Yep, so every Monday we'll do an audio or video podcast. So if you've got a podcast app on your phone, you just punch in Idle Game Chat or Dimp Digital and it will come up. The YouTube video version goes up at the same time as well. So the YouTube channel's youtube.com/dimpdigital, or again, punch in Dimp Digital, there's nothing else called that. And then if you're interested in live streaming or watching us play games or streaming the podcast, we've now started doing that live, usually on a Sunday evening. Twitch.tv/dimpdigital. If you've got Amazon Prime, link it up, give us a little subscribe, won't cost you a thing, we'll have a little beer.
Hey, happy days. I like your style. So I'm going to leave it there. This is the Social Monkey. This is Apps from Dimp Digital. Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend and we'll see you all soon. Take care, me monkeys. Bye, bye.